And in the midst of this ceremony, we're going through the using the plant medicine. We're using ayahuasca, and it's quite a powerful medicine. So you get some really altered states of consciousness, and you can start to experience your reality from a very heightened state. And the mind and the emotions and everything that you're experiencing in that state is just amplified. And so a lot of what they do as they're working with that medicine is using sound, using what they call the keros, or prayers to spirit, using rattles and shakers and bundles of leaves to create rhythms, and calling in spirit, and casting away the evil spirits, this type of stuff. And so I'm listening to that, going into my own inner journey, having my experience of whatever it is, psychedelic kind of experience. And the shaman stops playing and or singing, so to speak. And I thought when he stopped that he went and turned on his iPod or something, back in the day. And and quickly realized in my altered state, wait a minute, dude, there's no electricity here. The guy doesn't have an iPod, or the iPhones didn't even exist when I was doing this. So where's that music coming from? Where is that song? That's the most beautiful track that I've ever heard, because I was like, wow, I got to get that track off of him to use in my meditations, right? So cool. It was profound. It was like every cell in my body was just humming to this song. And very quickly I realized, oh, I'm hearing the sound of life, in essence, the sound of the jungle, not even just the leaves moving in the wind, or the little animals scurrying around, or the different sounds that you do hear in the jungle like that, but also it was a harmony and a melody that was moving the cells in my body, is the best way that I can describe it. And as they were moving, I was seeing the colors of that music within my mind and feeling the emotions of that music. And I could very quickly traverse from where I was in my body to be present to the sounds that I was hearing physically, and ride those waves of vibration that were the life of that jungle to whatever aspect of reality I wanted to go to.
Hey there, welcome back to Good for the Hive, the weekly podcast where I get to speak to some inspiring guests to share their life lessons and take a look at the question, what is a good life? This week's guest is Matt Omo. Matt is a sound healer, a breath worker, and an all-round shamanic dude. We talk all about how Matt got into sound healing in the first place, what will happen if you attend one of his sound healing retreats, and the concepts he uses to heal the mind, body, and soul. If you enjoy the episode, please do give it a like and share, and if you're new around here, do subscribe. The more likes and subs that we get on the channel, the more it helps us to continue to grow and attract inspiring guests just like Matt. Let's jump into the episode. Matt Omo, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Alex. Pleasure to be here.
Good stuff. We'll start the podcast where we start all of our podcasts here and ask you, what is a good life to you?
Yes. A good life to me is... I think a big component for me is freedom. It was something that it was a flag that I flew at a young age, was to have my freedom. So I was quite a defiant little brat. But over time, I realized that it's a very critical component, or a high value in my life, is to have freedom. And that's not just freedom to screw around and do what I want, but it's a freedom to be me, and a freedom to express myself in the way that is inspiring to me, that fulfills me. And within that, I've always been accustomed to helping people. And that's kind of why I've come into the field that I'm in, is to help people. And I find that the more I share, the more I give what's true to me, what inspires me, what lights me up, then that lights other people up. And it just then comes back to me, and it creates this cyclical kind of process. And it's interesting that you say what's a good life, because we run these workshops and we talk about, like, one of our main things about our work is to, in the retreats and the workshops and everything that we do, is about bringing people together. And what we base that off of is there was, I don't know if you've heard this Harvard study that was done over the span of like 80 years, and they followed like 400 people through their lives, and there's still like 60 people that are still alive today that they've been following and tracking to find out what's the key to happiness. And the key to happiness, the more key to happiness was connection, and like deep, meaningful connection, not just superficial, like, oh, I got a lot of friends on Facebook kind of connection, but this deep and meaningful connection. And I find that in that, then there's four components to that. It's a connection to myself, which is what I was alluding to, and knowing myself more and what inspires me. And then that allowed me then to create that connection with other people. And then ultimately that connection and community started to make me, allow me to feel even more safe in myself and able to express myself more and more confident. And then that led into, exploring, well, what more is there? And that led to a connection to spirit and ultimately the connection to the earth around me. And so like those four components to me like feed me and fill me up, is connection to self, others, the world, and spirit. So that in a nutshell is what I would say a good life is.
Oh, beautiful. Have you always had this level of freedom in your life? And was there a changing point?
I think I've been pretty lucky. I grew up in the States, and I've been in Australia now for almost 20 years. So I've been, lucky to be in countries that have, a lot of freedom, a lot of opportunity, a lot of, I'm not in a third world country where I'm struggling or have, threats around me all the time. So in that regard, I've been very lucky. As far as, and I was pretty smart as a kid. I don't know what's happened to me these days, but I was good with math and science. So I did pretty well in school. So I think with those things, those components, I did have a lot of freedom. I felt, like I alluded to, as a bit of a defiant little kid. And it was about me finding myself and not knowing myself, and then trying to push up against everything that I felt was controlling me. Inside of myself, I didn't always feel free, but because I didn't really know myself, to have that foundation, then to allow it to open or allow it to expand. It was more like I was trying to push my way into my life, if that makes sense. So I think I was lucky in how I was brought up and in the places that I lived and so forth. But internally there was a struggle, and there's always been a struggle. And it's the more that I come to understand myself, accept myself, and grow in myself, that then there's a greater ease inside of me that ultimately allows for a greater freedom.
Wow. So in your book, you write, we've gotten so busy, overwhelmed, numb, and disconnected in our lives that we've forgotten how to enjoy it. We are so focused on clothing, feeding, and dragging these meat suits around that we've forgotten how to have fun and take command of our innate creative power that wants to be expressed in the world. Firstly, meat suits, fantastic. Did you make that up, or have you stolen that cleverly from something else?
I've probably stolen it. I mean, the majority of my work's just stolen. No, I don't know this. I think I've heard that somewhere before, but it
But
really
otherwise
resonates with me. I think it's a good one. Everybody who catches that says that's perfect.
Yeah,
it's so
and
true.
otherwise, that paragraph there, what do you mean by that? How have you come to that feeling about how we're currently living our lives?
I think I've always been a dreamer, I guess you could say. I've always been curious and interested into fantasy, in the spirituality, and in what's beyond my five senses. What else is there in this world, beyond like what I can feel, what I can see, what I can taste, my five senses. What else is there? And there's always been this like awe and wonder that's been within me. And I think at a young age, having that kind of spaciousness within me, I guess I'm fairly creative. I guess the way that I work is quite creative or intuitive. I look at creativity and spirituality as kind of almost the same energy. And it's funny because I watch my daughter. She's 10 now, and she's very similar to me in that way. And I watch her and remember myself in that the world around me seems so rigid and so busy, and I didn't have, there's often times I just wanted to sit and lay in the grass, or watch the sunset, or just play in the leaves, or just these things, these simple things in life, and roll down a hill as a kid, until you get dizzy. And it's like those things brought so much joy to me. And I think there's a part of me that's very, very childlike, and I've always resonated with, like, all that kind of Disney stuff and the creative stuff and the playfulness and the joy. And I bring a lot of humor to what I do. And I think it was one of my saving graces at a younger age, actually, was to have a sense of humor and to be the class clown, and to lighten things up, because it felt very heavy and very depressing and very stuck to me. And that people were really missing the point of what life is all about. And so I guess in that whole statement, it's like, and what my work has been about is can we relinquish this identity that we've attached ourselves to, that is our body, our mind, our emotions, and all the things that we try and gather in our lives? Because can we relinquish that? Can we let that go? Because at the end, none of that's going to go with us after we die. And, as I get older, it's just like that death point just becomes so much more real, doesn't it? And present. And it's like, but what is it really all about? And it's like what I said earlier, it's about the connections you make, it's about the experiences you have, it's about the joy that you share, that fills you up. And it's like these types of things is something that I feel we should be setting as a priority in our societies, and basing the way that we move and function and reward people off of how kind of a human are you, how much good are you doing in the world, how much love are you sharing. It's like these types of things would change the planet and change the experience that we get to have here, because we're so busy trying to control and grab and prevent ourselves from dying, which is inevitable, that we miss the life that we're given. And it's just, I guess there's a lot in that statement. That's a great statement to pull out of my book.
You've been working in this field, and you say it in your book and other podcasts that you play around and you play in this field. So we'll get to the sound healing in a little bit, but you also talk about some dark times in your life and depressions and things before you found what you're doing and how you are and who you are right now. I don't necessarily want to talk about what led you into those depressions, but we almost use the word depression these days, and it trips off the tongue, and it doesn't have the volume and the magnitude that it should do. How did you personally get through those low points in your life?
There was a lot of things. There were some positive things and some negative things that pushed me through, and quite a bit of luck, I think. Good fortune. I was introduced to meditation and mindfulness at a young age because my dad was kind of keen on personal development, and so being a bit of a class clown, he didn't think that was the coolest thing for me to be doing. And being a defiant child, I wasn't very good at taking discipline, and so his creative way of disciplining me was to give me a cassette series. Remember the old cassettes?
Yeah.
give me one of, like, a pack of 12 of those, and on some topic, like like Anthony Robbins or Wayne Dyer or Marianne Williamson or Carolyn Mace, like all the godfathers and godmothers of this work in the Western world. And he'd say, go to your room and do a report on this. And so I'd be in my room having to listen to these and having to give my dad a report on this stuff that as an 11, 12-year-old boy is torture, And but the silver lining was obviously that, in his creative ways, he was teaching me some great tools and some great techniques that allowed me to deal with a lot of my emotional upsets, my anxiety. I'm very I like things in order. And funny, it's like a duality within me, is that a part of me is very like goal orientated and everything has to be in a certain place, and a part of me is like, I just want to be free. And it's like,
constant struggle in your own head.
That's it, mate. I'm an enigma in myself. It was in that kind of controlling and trying to want everything to be a certain way, and then also trying to reach out and find myself and all that. There's a lot of anxiety and a lot of just stress internally. So, learning how to breathe properly through meditation, through body awareness, through learning how to be still, and the power of positive thinking and this kind of stuff. It was like I balked at it as a kid, but they're actual, powerful tools that help me through a lot of the life's ups and downs and challenges. So
Could
that's
you
probably the
gave you
main
a good
thing.
base level to cope with coping mechanisms, I guess, to deal with things, because you're still human. You're still going to go through the shit. You're still going to get depressed. You're still going to have highs and lows. But if you've got that base level to return to, you think that helps a lot.
100%. And with the base level too, like one thing that I didn't realize either is that over the years, I really started to explore health and my diet and my biochemistry and everything, because there's so many different tiers to being human, obviously, right? And
Mm.
how these meat suits function properly. So it's like, for growing up in Middle America, it was meat and potatoes kind of thing, and fast food was a component of what I was eating, and processed food, like different snack foods and things, and there's a high sugar content in the diets of Americans, um, and I have my constitution, my biology is not really set very well for that, and it just amplified a lot of the imbalances, inability to focus, like all these different things. And it wasn't until I discovered it probably here in Australia about 15 years ago, working with a naturopath, and how to where my biomarkers were, and where my biochemistry was, and how I had different levels that were off the charts, and I needed supplements to bring my levels back down. And it's like I had some supplements one day from this. I had like a couple sessions with her, and it's just like these drops of zinc or something, or vitamin B or something. It wasn't anything crazy, but my body didn't have that. It didn't have enough of that, and so it was messing with a lot of the functionality of my brain and my state of being. And when I took those drops, it was fascinating, because I actually had my kids in the car after the session. I picked them up. Well, I got them after the session. They weren't sitting in the car dying. I picked my kids up after the session, right? And they were at a young age at that point. And yeah, so it must have only been about 10 years ago. My youngest is 10. But they kind of, being kids and being loud and, having their emotions and whatnot, it was very hard for me. It was like grating. I didn't handle sounds very well. And I had a few of those drops, and it was like my whole presence and my whole state of being just dropped. And I was just so calm and so present. And I actually looked back at my daughter, and I said, "Are you okay?" And I looked in her in the eyes, and it was like the first time in her life that I actually was present with her, because I didn't realize I wasn't present in myself, because my biochemistry was so out of whack. And, that's not only from the foods, but, alcohol is a big component of knocking out your chemistry and everything. And it was a huge part of my social upbringing in the States was, and even here in Australia, it's a big thing, have a drink, go meet you at the pub, So it took me a long time to realize that. And that was a big pivotal point for me, because I started taking supplements and getting my biochemistry into a healthy state that then gave me a point of reference that I hadn't had before. So all those years trying to find peace and well-being and letting go of anxiety and the stress and the ups and downs of my emotions, I didn't have the foundation that I then discovered years later that gave me a reference point to say, that's actually what it feels like to be grounded in myself, to be in balance biochemically, and ultimately have a clear head, an ability to manage my emotions more. And that really sent me on a trajectory of a new state of being and a new way to manage myself and live more in harmony with myself.
So have you cut out alcohol entirely now, or in
Not
moderation?
entirely. I mean, it's such a big component. The older I get, the less my body can handle it. But and it just, you weigh your pros and cons. And I'll have a drink here or there, but I know it brings up depression. And it's so fascinating that this isn't really talked about in the forefront, because for so long I was suffering in uni, and it was just like a party time, and I'm drinking 3 or 4 times a week, like not just a couple beers, like just getting drunk, and all that is a depressant. And I'm like, I'm so depressed and feeling suicidal, but I'm still drinking. And it's like, it's just a vicious circle.
Mm.
And so now I'm so present to it. It's like I don't want to just cut it out completely. It's fun sometimes. It's a social thing, or have a glass of wine to relax. But I know if I do, there's going to be a 2-day progression of emotional kind of wavering within me.
Mm.
And it's just to be aware of that. What are you signing up for when you have that drink?
So we fast forward from your uni days, and you describe a time in a Peruvian jungle with some shaman smoking mapacho, and that seems to be a real turning point in your life, like an awakening. Was that the pivotal point in your life that led you into the career that you have now as a sound healer?
That was one of them, for sure. It was.
Talk me through what happened there in the jungle. What the hell were you up to?
Mate, you've done your homework.
I had 2 days. 2 days. Oh, shit.
Good on you. Yeah. So the jungle. Where do I store it? There's a progression of time. Obviously, this is one moment. Is that it was during a ceremony. There was many other times that things were coming up, but it was just this, kind of all these roads kind of just coalesced together in this moment. I was leading the retreat, but I had enrolled a few shaman in South America to support the medicine ceremonies, because that's not my forte. But I knew the importance of it because I had worked with plant medicines before, and they had opened my mind to different things, and they're quite powerful. So I wanted it a part of my retreat. I just didn't feel it was ethical for me to say, "Oh, I'm going to do this." So we brought the healers in, the shamans, to work with that, and we're off grid, like way off grid. It's like you go to Iquitos by a bus, and then which is a small town out of some of the major cities. Have you been to Peru or South America?
Not to Peru yet. No, I've been to some of South America though.
Okay. So yeah, it's just a small town, river town, and so that's pretty remote to begin with. But then you hop on a little boat and you go like an hour and a half up the river to very secluded, very isolated retreat space where there's thatched roofs, like very screens in the windows, no windows, just very, very basic, and
generators for a bit of electricity and light,
for a bit of the time. Yeah, like the first 3 hours of night or whatever, and then they just shut them down because they're running on petrol. And yeah, so you get the picture. It was just very, very remote, and it was the ceremony then was not even in that. It was just even further into the jungle and the ceremonial space, which was just a wood platform with screens basically, and then a thatched roof, and a plank that you walk across to where the toilet is. It's just a hole in the wood that just drops to the floor. That's basically it. So very, very advanced. And in the midst of this ceremony, we're going through the plant medicine. We're using ayahuasca. And, it's quite a powerful medicine. So you get some really altered states of consciousness, and you can start to experience your reality from a very heightened state. And the mind and the emotions and everything that you're experiencing in that state is just amplified. And so a lot of what they do as they're working with that medicine is using sound, using what they call the keros, or prayers to spirit, using rattles and shakers and bundles of leaves to create rhythms, and calling in spirit, and casting away the evil spirits, this type of stuff. And so I'm listening to that, going into my own inner journey, having my experience of whatever it is, psychedelic kind of experience. And the shaman stops playing and or singing, so to speak. And I thought when he stopped that he went and turned on his iPod or something, back in the day, and and quickly realized in my altered state, wait a minute, dude, there's no electricity here. The guy doesn't have an iPod, or the iPhones didn't even exist when I was doing this. So where's that music coming from? Where is that song? That's the most beautiful track that I've ever heard, because I was like, wow, I got to get that track off of him to use in my meditations, right? It's so cool. It's just, it was profound. It was like every cell in my body was just humming to this song. And very quickly I realized, oh, I'm hearing the sound of life. in essence. The sound of the jungle, not even just the leaves moving in the wind, or the little animals scurrying around, or the different sounds that you do hear in the jungle like that, but also it was a harmony and a melody that was moving the cells in my body, is the best way that I can describe it. And as they were moving, I was seeing the colors of that music within my mind and feeling the emotions of that music. And I could very quickly traverse from where I was in my body to be present to the sounds that I was hearing physically, and ride those waves of vibration that were the life of that jungle to whatever aspect of reality I wanted to go to. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Not while I'm not on ayahuasca.
Yeah, that's it. It's like, go smoke a bowl and then come back, mate. I mean, you probably understand it.
But now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But the truth of it, the fact of it is, and the reason I share all that with you is because that was the moment that I realized that what the ancients have talked about, and they, through a lot of sacred texts and a lot of religions and cultures, you'll hear this concept that all of consciousness is vibration, is sound. It's in the Bible. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And in the gong that's sitting behind me here is there's a creation story related to that. Is that the gong was sounded, and the reverberations of that gong sent vibration into space that created the cosmos. The Yadaki, the didgeridoo here, has a similar story. The great creator came and grabbed a hollowed out tree stump and lifted it from the ground and blew into it, and the termites, or the white ants in it, became the stars, and the sounds that reverberated created the world around us, the cosmos again. So it's like all this is infused in there. It's just, but it was conceptual, and it's like, I get it, but I don't really get it. I don't know it, and I haven't embodied it, I guess would be the way to say it. And in that moment, I felt like I embodied it. I was like, oh, I feel it, and I realize how I'm creating this sound, which is ultimately life, and that I have within me, we all have within us, a capacity then to start to take command of that. And I think that's the gist of it, is there's an ability we have far beyond what we're striving to create in this 3D world, in this, I've got to do this and make this happen to have the things in my life that I want to have. Is that there's an ability within us to feel a certain way, think a certain way, and hold a certain being or state of being within us that ultimately creates a frequency or a song that will then sing our life into existence, I guess is the best way to say it.
So poetic. So do you now think that or do you believe that part of your sound healing, you can do this purely with instruments and avoid the medicines or drugs or anything else? You can just enact this through your work?
Yeah, 100%. Because for me, it wasn't really an option to start to dabble with the medicines at that time. This was 20 years ago, and things have loosened a little bit where people can bring in medicines into the Western worlds a little bit more. But back then it was quite taboo. So I thought, well, how can I bridge that? And coming out of that ceremony, I was dabbling with sound because I was studying Kundalini yoga at that point. So a lot of Kundalini yoga is mantra and chanting and different meditations using your voice. So I was exploring mantras and chants and different Sanskrit mantras and things like that. So it was in my mind. But then as I come out of that practice, something just opened in me, and I was able to, sounds came out of my voice. It was as if I was able to, I had read the song sheet, I guess you could say. It's like I got the book of life had opened its music to me, and I could play that music, or I could express that music. And so I had a little Tibetan bowl that I was playing with through the meditations I was leading on that retreat. And the same song that I heard in that ceremony after I had come off of the medicine was still in me. And I could sense it in the jungle the next day. And I played that bowl in a different way. And it was as if the spirit of that jungle came to me and sung with me in that moment. And that then came back with me to the work that I do. And it was like, the work wasn't so much about, oh, what's the mantra? What note am I singing? How am I tuning into? It wasn't so logical. It was more of a embodied expression of a higher consciousness that wanted to move through me. I guess I kind of got out the way. I kind of surrendered to the fact that it's not something I'm just making up. It's not just in my head. There's something far greater that's moving us and inspiring us. And so, yeah, I use the sound. But the other component that I use that is coming a lot more in the forefront now in the last few years is breath work as well. And so with sound and breath, there are two aspects that have the ability to work deeply with our nervous system, which the nervous system being the filter to reality. You know, the only way we're experiencing our life is ultimately through our nervous system. And so a lot of the work that I find that I'm doing these days is working with stimulating that nervous system and creating a activation, because if you put an amplified stress on the nervous system, you release certain stress hormones and chemicals, and the body gets out of balance. But we lean into the body's natural ability to find balance or homeostasis. And so if I trigger a stress response through loud sounds like the gong or up-tempo rhythms or an active breathing, then ultimately to counteract that, the nervous system and the body itself has to rebalance by releasing in excess of endorphins. And so within us, we have, oxytocin, the love hormone. We got serotonin, which is almost an exact replica to the molecules of a psilocybin. So that's fascinating. It basically got magic mushrooms within us. The DMT is a natural chemical in the body, which is one of the main components of ayahuasca. And, I find people come in who've worked with the plant medicines and they work with my process and they say, well, that was just like I was back in ceremony, but I didn't take anything. Like, how is that possible? And so I believe that we have within us the greatest capacity to heal, and we have access to the best drugs in the entire world within us. So
this is so interesting. So is this dynamic, or in theory, could you record things, play them back later, and they will have the exact same effect? Or is it dynamic in the moment and it needs what it needs at that moment, independent?
Well, there's so many different factors that you've got to look at. There's a formula that I have lent into. It comes from Jonathan Goldstein. I don't know if you've heard of him before. Jonathan Goldstein's one of the grandfathers of sound healing. He's one of them that really brought, ancient wisdom of sound healing into the Western world, 60 years ago. And his formula because what he was doing was he was looking at sound and healing and different mantras, different traditions and all this stuff. And he realized, and he was trying to put a compendium together. He's like, okay, if you're suffering from this ailment, then you need this mantra, you need these notes, and this will heal you. And what he did was, when he brought all these different cultures and mantras together, they were all would work to an extent, but they were different. And he's like, well, how come in this tradition it could be an A note, and in this tradition it's an F note, or it's this mantra here and it's that mantra there? And so he said it didn't line up. But what he come to is that intention was the component that was missing. Is that you got to take into account what you're intending to have happen upon the sounds that are moving through you, as a component to that healing then. And so he had the intention plus the sound equals the healing and the transformation. And then as I started to explore that more, I was like, well, intention's one thing. Is like, if I want to have more love in my life, or I want to create more harmony or balance, or whatever your intention, like that would be an intention, right? Or I want to heal this, a broken heart, or I want to cure myself of cancer, like whatever intention could be anything. But it's like, that's where I want to get to. But I have to first start where I am. And if I don't actually know where I am, I'm never going to be able to get to where I want to go. And so that's when I added awareness into the formula. And so I was like, first you have to have an awareness. And the more deeply and intimately you have awareness of the ailment, of the imbalance of yourself, then the more accurately you can plot your course to that intention, which is the destination. So it's awareness plus intention, plus then the sound, which becomes the vehicle. Right? So the sound is the vehicle that takes the formless, the expanse of consciousness of the divine, and brings it into form. So it's just a vehicle. It's just what we travel in is the vibrations and the frequencies creating vortexes of condensed energy into form, basically. And so if that's the vehicle, you've got to have an awareness of where that vehicle is and where you want to drive it to with the intention. And then you bring the sound and you can travel with it. So that's my base level of sound healing formula. Awareness plus intention plus sound equals transformation and healing. So with that, whose awareness is it? Whose intention is it? If I'm working with somebody else, where are they? Where am I? What's going on in that moment? What's the environment they're in? There's so many variables then through that. So I have the sounds come through me and I let myself express through instruments, through my voice, what feels like the right journey towards that intention, towards where I want to go, to help support the person through their healing, through their evolution. But also then that's encapsulated and you can record that and somebody else could meet that and have a different experience, but still a positive experience. It just fascinates me. I don't fully have the understanding of how it works, but it works. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of what I'm doing is just loving people back into harmony, what it comes down to.
It's interesting. When I thought about it, and I was obviously going to ask, how do you do what you do? It always assumed you would take pleasant melodies or songs or tones or whatever it was, and it was always a positive thing. But you say you also used the sort of shock tactic of hitting a gong to get that stress response, because you need both sides. It's not just purely nice flowing music. You need a bit of stress response to make the body do what it naturally does and harmonize.
Well, the way that I work, I feel it's important. There's many sound healers out there and people working in the way of relaxing and soothing people, which is it's hugely positive for our stressed out worlds, so in our lives, because we don't take the time to relax. So, in that creates ill health or disease, is that we're always on, always, stress. We're living from stress. And then we just fall asleep. And in that time, it's like the body's trying to recover from the stress. And then we wake up and we put ourselves in stress again. So to have an ability to start to pivot into a place of relaxation, but not fully drop off, is where you want to be. That's the sweet spot. It's called the zero stress point. It's when the body goes from fight or flight or to rest and digest. It goes back and forth, but there's a pivot point when those two are in balance. And that's where healing actually happens. And so another reason why I work with the more amplified, more stimulating stuff is because if you hold people in that stress response and they stay conscious to an extent where they don't just fall asleep, they can start to recondition their nervous system to not just go from stress to fall asleep, to actually spend more time pivoting in that balance point. And that's what it comes down to, is that the more, because our nervous system, naturally, a healthy nervous system pivots about 4 times a minute. That's about the maximum. But our nervous systems hardly ever pivot. We did a study in one of our retreats where we were able to measure the state of the group's nervous system. We sat in a circle and we held each other's, hand to wrist kind of thing around the circle. And that connected all of us up. And then there was a couple probes on myself and my colleague, and a computer was in the middle there that was measuring then the electrical response of the nervous system in that. So we did it before the retreat started and after, and we did the same meditation. It was like a 4-minute meditation, and you could see the data shows that the nervous system of the group was in a stress response the entire 4 minutes. It didn't pivot at all. And then when we came to the end of the retreat after 5 days, we did the same thing, and you can watch that the group's nervous system starts to pivot, and it hit its maximum point of it did it 4 times a minute over those 4 minutes. It was like, wow. And that's where you know that you're starting then to recondition yourself and your nervous system by adding those stresses in a safe environment that allows you then to, it's like working out, right? Your muscles are going to atrophy unless you use them. Our nervous system is atrophy because we're not using it properly. And so in essence, I I think the stress is important in this controlled environment in correlation with the relaxation, so you can learn to pivot more and create more health.
And how do you think people naturally use sound in a good way without even realizing it? I was trying to think when I knew I'd be talking to you. I was like, how do I use sound naturally? And then I thought, oh yeah, Alexa, play whale sounds before I go to sleep. And I've got this sort of natural ebb and flow. And I know in myself that a walk in nature, a long walk in nature, does me so much good. But fast forward to 2024, and I've always got headphones on. I'm always listening to a podcast or something completely different, and I'm not where I am, as it were. But
Yeah.
rewind 10, 15 years ago, maybe I was, and I was just walking with my own thoughts and listening to the sounds and everything else. How do you think people do get the benefits from sound, even though they don't appreciate that they're getting them?
Well, it's just naturally reverberating through your body. And it's something that I think we need to start taking responsibility for in our modern worlds. Is, like I'm sitting in this little studio here, and I've got my computer fan is humming. I've got lights on me that are sending frequencies. A lot of times we sit in offices with those big iridescent lights, and there's so many noisy things that are going on around us, and we think, oh, that's just normal, but it's actually sending a stress response to your nervous system. And it's like, there's a lot of studies that show that nature sounds, that's why it's in meditative stuff, is that, sounds of waves crashing, the sounds of birds chirping, the wind through the trees, like this type of natural rhythms actually create a relaxation response in the body, and they're critical for our well-being. So it's like, just be more present, I think, in our lives, and be aware of, like, what are you exposing yourself to? And on top of that, I think there's another thing that we tend to forget as well, is that music and sound is not just a passive experience, is that we're always using our voice as well. And I look at the voice as, if you think about it, the voice is an expression of the breath, right? So you if you look through a lot of traditions and cultures, you've got, the breath is not just oxygen exchange. It's a life force, an energy, a prana, a chi that we're bringing in and out of ourselves. And there's many practices that amplify that and stimulate that and nurture that. And so if you look at it that way, it's like your breath is your life. And I mean, realistically, it is too, isn't it? Like, you need to breathe in and you're dead. And life is one big breath, right? You first thing you do when you come in is you inhale. The last thing you do when you go out is you exhale. So in essence, it's one big breath. So if I start to frame my breath as an extension of my life, as my life, and then the expression of that breath through my vocal cords is then life expressing out, then I'm like, wow, that's really a profound thing to start to sit with. And how beautiful then is the voice, and how lucky are we to have that ability to express, and then start to look at how that impacts you biologically, biochemically, and that you can hear people that are in love and they talk, and it's a sing-songy kind of pentameter, like it's like they're singing a song, basically, right? And where if somebody's angry, it's very rigid and fast and direct. And so there's a song that's coming out of our voice all the time. It's dependent on how we feel. And so it's infused with the feeling tone. And it's really starting to understand then, why do we do that? Why do we have the sing-songy? Because it elicits a response in the body of love. And why do lovers talk like that to each other? Because they're full of oxytocin. They're full of a biochemical cocktail of love that then is expressed through their voice. And if you think about that, you also then, if you're full of anger and all the chemicals that are running through your system for anger, the voice is expressing that as well and eliciting a response of that contraction within you if you're being exposed to that. It's powerful. And the body mostly consisting of water, which is 4 times a greater conductor of sound than the air that we hear in. Our cells in our body are picking up that vibration, that frequency, and the intonations of that at a far greater rate than our ears are. And I used to say during all the COVID stuff I do stuff online, and we would do toning together, just like say an ah sound or an om sound. And what happens when you do tones or you talk with each other, even just through headphones, is that your cells start to move. to those vibrations. So you're literally touching one another through the sound of your voice. And that, why is that important? Because if you actually went up and, you know, embraced somebody or put your hand on their hand or shook hands, just the touch of the skin creates an oxytocin release, creates feel-good hormones, dopamine. And toning or talking to one another creates the same thing. And this is where that power of connection comes in that I was speaking to earlier. It's like, we're so wired for connection, for, you know, this being together, being in community, being in communication, that our nervous system thrives on that. Our biochemistry shifts, our heart rate softens, our, you know, we health is just at the forefront of a well-connected, well-supported, like a community of people. If you're alone, if you're lonely, if you're feeling isolated, your health will decline. It's just, the data's there. It's just fascinating. So I don't know. I went on 1,000 different tangents there, mate. I don't even know what your question.
It's brilliant. It's like you say, they're getting that physical connection without getting the physical being in the same space, as it were.
Yeah, exactly.
And when it comes to, so I'm meeting the sort of people I'm meeting as part of this podcast. I've started a bit of a meditation practice myself now, and it's a mantra-based one, but it's one that you say in your head. Do you think, is it the same sort of thing when you're intoning something in your own head without verbalizing it? Is it the same sort of thing? Can you call that resonance? Can you call that vibrations if you're doing it in your own thoughts?
You can, but it's different in that. See, I look at there's four. I try and articulate this in the book, and often try and say it more clearly. But that concept that I was talking about in the jungle, how there was this life that was singing to me, and then I'm expressing that out of myself. It's like we're in constant. We're in a symphony of sound. We're in a constant concert of life. We're singing life into existence, basically. And I say that we're transmitting a vibrational signature. So it's like we're signing the cosmos with our vibration, basically. And then when whatever that vibration is, we've tuned ourselves into that ultimately echoes back to us similar vibrations. So if we're, to simplify, if we're holding ourselves with a lot of, you know, stress and pressure, shoulders are tight, jaw is tight, we're kind of tense in our lives, then we're looking through that lens of tension, and the world that we see coming back at us, that we experience, is a tense world or a threat. Whereas if we're relaxed, we're comfortable, we feel safe, we feel love, then we look through that lens, and that's the world we see coming back at us. So what makes up that vibrational signature? It's our breath, the rhythm of the breath, the openness of the breath or the contraction of the breath, the body, how you're holding the body, where the restrictions are, what you've numbed down that you haven't paid attention to, that you're neglecting, the emotions that we feel, the things we suppress, the things that we're expressing, as well as the thoughts we're thinking. And I say those are the four components of the vibrational signature. And it's not just a theory. It's that each one of those things can be measured as a frequency, as a vibration, as a sound. They can measure the frequencies of your brain, and your brain waves will change based on the state of mind that you're in, as well as you can measure a person's emotional state, their heart, electromagnetic field of their heart, and that will change based on the state that they're in, the emotions that they're holding, or suppressing, for that matter. And so to the body, the cells. I just read this the other day. The study back in December was finding they were actually able to measure the cells' frequencies. The cells in your body, they were actually did a study where they could measure them, and they found that they were like, what was it, 20 to 30 kilohertz to up to 150 kilohertz was the resonant frequencies of the cells in our body. So they've proven this, that there's actual vibrations in the cells in our bodies, and they're just beyond our level of hearing, which is 20K, and up into ultrasound. And so that's just fascinating to think about, isn't it? That these are theories that the mystics have talked about, is that you are just vibration. And now science is doing studies and showing that they can measure the frequencies of your cell that are ultrasonic. And it's fascinating because ultrasound travels at the speed of light. So ultimately, our vibration that we're transmitting out there is traveling into the cosmos at the speed of light. We're just not aware of it. So fascinating stuff, mate. I could talk for days.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I'm going to have to speed through because I'm running out of time with you now. So if someone were to come to one of your retreats, what are they going to experience, and what is a sound bath? Just a nice, simple question.
So the way that I work, just to break it down practically, is that we do, I move through 4 stages. So there's the activation, where I'm doing an active breathing process to stimulate the nervous system, along with like gongs and drums and up-tempo rhythms to really create a stimulation and activation. And then after about 15 minutes or so, I'll pull that away and let people then shift their breathing into a relaxed breath. And this is the second stage, which I call the unwinding. So during that time, the sounds kind of soften a little bit. I lean more into like crystal bowls or overtones with my voice, or organ sounds, things that are more melodic. And it gives the body the chance to say, oh, we've just stressed the system to a point where we need to counteract that stress response. So the unwinding stage 2 is where the body just starts to understand that it needs to do what it does best and create homeostasis, which quickly leads us into stage 3, where the endorphins are released, like I talked about before. And so oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, anandamide, DMT, all these feel-good hormones are released that create an altered state of consciousness. And this is the point where you come into an experience where the mind that you're perceiving yourself and your life with is a different mind, which is critical because you're never going to solve the problems in your life with the same mind that created them, right? Yeah, Einstein quote. So in that moment is when people have these heightened experiences. Some of them report like talking to loved ones that have passed, or people say, oh, I realized the pain and grief that I was holding was because of this. And in that instant, I just let it go. Or I found my purpose, or got clarity on my relationship, or like there's so many things that can happen in that heightened state where you've got access to a greater awareness. And then the critical component is stage 4, is that I find a lot of this work can become addictive, is that we want to chase the high. We want to go after that experience of that altered state and get all woo-woo and talk about how, intergalactic we got and this and that. But it's the importance of then bringing that awareness and that wisdom into our everyday life is critical. And I don't think any of this work is about trying to get out to spirit, and it's very easy to distract your life and the challenges that you face with this work, and it just becomes another addiction. But if we have a strong integration process, which is the final stage of the work, where I'm using more of the meditative guidance and the crystal bowls and the more melodic, soothing sounds to help people really feel into what the wisdom was that they gained and what that information means and how to integrate that in their lives. Like, what do they need to do differently? How do they need to, nurture that into their lives? Was the final component then of that sound journey. So that in a nutshell is what they experienced through a sound session with me.
And is this creating a feedback loop for you? Do you learn from every retreat that you do and the people that you come into contact with, or have you got it pretty set to what you expect to happen and what you expect people to go through?
It's pretty set, but it's always evolving. It's always growing. I think I get more at the beginning stages. I felt I had to do more than I do now. It's almost like I know how to set the wheels in motion. So things, and there's little points where I'm like, okay, I need a bit more here. I need a bit more there. It's like I'm like a chef that doesn't work with a recipe anymore. It's like when I first started, I'm like, this is the recipe. I've got to put this much of this in at each time and cook it to that degree. And now it's just like, no, just a little more salt here, a little more cayenne there, and away we go. And so it's pretty dialed in. I think another critical component to realize too, that I'm coming to greater and greater acceptance of, is it's not me doing it. Is that, there's a greater wisdom, there's a greater intelligence that's wanting to guide us, and everybody has so much support, so much love around them that's available to them. And it's about coming together and opening people to that possibility. And as people open to that possibility, they realize the healers that they are themselves, and the ability they have to transcend the challenges of their lives. And then it's like miracles happen. There's things come in that I can't explain. It's beyond anything I can articulate. It's just beautiful, and it gives me so much hope and so much joy for humanity. Because I think at the end of the day, I think we're all striving to create a better world, to create a better place where we can all, there's more kindness, there's more love, there's more connection. And it's my deepest hope that I can help in some small way inspire that into the world, so that when the time comes, I can hand this world off to my kids, and it's a better world than when I came into it.
That's such a lovely intention to come with. Through the book and through other bits and pieces I've picked up on you, I sense almost a little bit of a frustration that you've seen what you've seen, you've experienced what you've experienced, but just explaining that to others and getting others to give it a go. And you mentioned a little bit of fluff within the space as well. There's certain things that you don't buy into everything that everyone's touting out there when it comes to spirituality, mindfulness, or the rest of it. Where do you think that's come from? Am I accurate in sensing the front?
Going deep. Partially within myself, I think. I think for a long time, like, I've alluded to a few times that inner struggle within myself. Learning to love myself at a deeper level, accept who I am and all the flaws that I have, puts me at greater peace within myself, greater ease, gives me ultimately more freedom in my life. So I think there's some internal frustration within me and my slow evolution. The judgments I have on myself kind of are there. I think there's so much change going on in the world right now that's really exciting. But at the same time, it's like we always say that in the work we do, we get to see the best of humanity. We get total strangers in a room together, and some of them come together for 5 days with us, and they don't know each other. They're kind of guarded when they come in, but day 3, day 4, day 5, the love, the camaraderie, the connection, the sense of family, the kindness, the support, like what we witness in there, it's amazing. It's just beautiful. And to see that, to witness that, and to experience that, and then to turn the news on, it's like such a conflict, such a difference of reality. And I think I just have, I don't know. Maybe I'm hard on myself and hard on humanity at the end of the day, but I think that we can do so much better. And I think there's just so many things that we've perpetuated over time that we've lost our path. And it's like, how do we bring heart and soul back into our everyday lives? And it doesn't have to be earth shattering. I think that's the thing that gets lost a lot, is that we feel we have to do this big, amazing, huge thing in life to make an impact. And if we can't do it, then I'll forget about it. I can't make a change. But it's like, you walk down the street and you pass somebody walking their dog and you smile at them, and that can change their moment, change their next 5 minutes, their next 10 minutes. Or you say hello to the guy who's delivered the post, or the person making your coffee. You're like, hey, and you just have a little joke with them, or laugh with them, and it shifts everything. It's like those little moments, they just ripple into the world around us. It's just simple things. And yeah, if we just slow down a little bit and just, it's funny. I had this girl, that I knew. She met this guy on one of those dating apps, right? And then they never lined up, but they ended up at like a social gathering together. And she's like, "Oh, you're the guy that I met on that app." And he's like, "Oh yeah, just just respond to the app. And he wouldn't talk to her in person. And I'm like, that's just the epitome of where we're at. It's like, oh, text me, even though you're right in front of me kind of vibe. And then
That's
like,
painful, isn't it? So you've
right?
been doing this for 15, 20 years now. If you
Yeah.
pluck your average person out of society and put them into one of your sessions, what are you seeing differently in the last changes in people? I'm at the moment, I'm downloading apps to keep myself from using other apps. It's ridiculous. It's like I'm having to like simplify my phone, even though I love going on my phone, because I can just see the detrimental effects it's having of just spending so much time scrolling on nonsense apps.
Yeah.
And are you finding it harder are you finding it harder, maybe easier to get through to people when they come in, or are they further away from a decent base level, which I don't know what that means, but is it harder to get people to relax and get into what you're putting out there?
No, actually, I find it easier. I think yeah, surprisingly, I think I hear what you're saying. Like, it is a thing that we're so attached to those, but the thing about it too is that we're so far from center, is that as soon as you start to pull those distractions out, people have a long journey to come back, and they come back much quicker. It's like, and there's a willingness to come there that's wasn't present like 20 years ago. Is that a lot of, the work I did was just explaining what I was doing and trying to introduce people to these mantras and to these instruments. And it's like, now everybody that I run into, they know what instrument. I walk in with the crystal bowl, and the average person knows what it is. Or I say chant Om, and everybody knows. Whereas 20 years ago, I'm like, we're gonna chant Om, which is the sound of creation. Like, I had to go through the whole thing and like what it means. And so, in many ways, I think we're right. We're ready. We want this. We're so fed up on some level with these distractions and with this disconnect that we're just hungry. We're starving for it. And that then creates a willingness like I haven't experienced before. So people are ready. It's just about it's with that too is the downside is that there's a lot of people out there that are just jumping on the bandwagon and saying I'm a guru because I've got an Instagram feed that has 1,000 likes or whatever. It's a slippery slope, and then people are getting jaded because of that. But it's like, do your homework, look at, really feel into who the people are you're working with. Don't give your power away to just anyone, and then when you find the right teacher and the right community, it's like we're ready. We got within us the capacity to move mountains, and it's beautiful. So,
and going back to the practicality now, if somebody wanted to take a step to live a good life, what one single thing within the space of sound healing could you tell them to do on a daily basis to get an improvement in what they feel?
Well, I'll share it with you, and I put it to you as a challenge, and anyone who listens to this as a challenge, because you're going to hear what I say and you're going to be like, is that all? But I guarantee if you do it for even just a week, shit's going to come up. You're going to open, your life's going to change. And if you do it for a month, you'll be astounded at how far your life and your experience and your well-being shifts. So it's a simple practice. Is the foundation of all sound, or the canvas for which life sings upon, is silence. And we're so devoid of silence in our lives, to the fact that we sleep next to our phones half the time, and they're pinging through the night half the time. And like, we just don't have space for silence. And if there's no space, then nothing can express. And so I would invite people to nurture space into their lives, nurture silence. And a simple practice to do that, to help, because it's like, well, what does that mean? Do I just sit there and be silent? Is to listen to your base level rhythm, which is your heartbeat. So I tend to, and we do this all the time in all of our work, we start here. So left hand on your heart, right hand on the lower belly, so just below the navel, and just hold that. So in putting your hands on yourself like that, you've literally embraced yourself. So you're holding yourself, and you're sending a signal to your body, to your mind, saying, I'm held, I'm safe. Even if you don't think it, your body knows it from just that posture. So that alone, and then start to listen and feel your heartbeat. and see if your breath can soften and deepen down into your belly. So on the inhales, the breath expands the belly, and on the exhale, it falls back to the spine. And if you can do that for 3 to 5 minutes, just do it before you get out of bed. Like, before you put your feet on the ground, you wake up, however you wake up, just stop 3 to 5 minutes. I'm going to be still. I'm going to be silent. I'm going to listen to my heartbeat and my breath. You'll be amazed at what comes up and what wants to move. Emotions will come up. Old memories will come up. Inspiration will be had. You'll be like, oh, wow, that's the answer I was looking for. And it was just there all along. So in relation to sound, often we go straight to making more noise. Just be still, be silent. And then in that space, the music will want to express, the music of your life.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Matt. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I've got the quickfire round now if you've got another 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'll let you get on with your day. But thank you for the time here. It's
Pleasure,
so weird.
Mate. It's been fun.
It's
I really,
super
really
early in the
enjoyed
morning for me. Oh, that's brilliant. That's really nice to hear. It's super early in the morning for me, and it's getting into afternoon for you. Are you Sydney based now?
Yeah. Sydney. So it's almost 6. Yeah.
Okay. So what book, podcast, or blog would you gift someone if they wanted to live a good life? Doesn't have to be one of each. Just is there a book that you gift people often?
Yeah, one pivotal book for me was The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra, and you can get a really small version of that. That's a good little taster.
Okay. What was your biggest light bulb moment where you discovered something about yourself?
Oh, they happen all the time, mate. Always learning. The biggest light bulb moment, I think, is when meditation has been like a saving grace for me, and not so much guided meditation. It's a positive thing as well, but sitting in stillness, like what I alluded to before, and just being silent, being present, and taking the time to be still. And in there, it's just opened me to so many aspects of myself that I didn't even know, and an ability to feel at a deeper level, an ability to love at a deeper level, and an ability to accept myself at a deeper level. And those 3 things are just life-changing. And every day when I stop and take the time to connect and acknowledge that space within myself, it just informs me and inspires me in ways that I couldn't have imagined.
Brilliant. What's your best and worst habits?
Best habit is persistence. I don't give up very easily, and I guess that's probably my worst habit as well. So I can be like a dog with a bone and not want to let go of things when it's pretty clear that I do need to let go and just trust a little bit more. So it's a double-edged sword of the motivation, the drive that I have within myself to get things done and accomplish things, as well as then knowing when to just chill out.
What's been your best mistake?
My best mistake is well, that's a fun question, isn't it?
That's some
I
good
make
answers.
a lot of mistakes in my life. I'm kind of a haphazard kind of guy. So like I do things and I'm like, crap, I shouldn't have done that. But in that, I think the best mistake I made was to just leap and just keep stepping forward blindly. It's got me in trouble, but I couldn't have invented the work that I do. I couldn't have thought my way there. I had to actually leap and keep leaping and falling and picking myself back up to discover this. So it's just trusting the unknown, just letting go, just leaping, I think is, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
That's brilliant. And last one, who in your life should we talk to next if we want to learn some lessons on how to live a good life?
Reach out to Guy. Call Guy Lawrence up, man. A holler. Say, Come on, mate, get on my podcast.
So you're shooting off on your retreat very shortly.
He's leaving in 2 days, so you won't get him till the end of August. But I'll send you a few more names, people that you probably love to chat to. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Matt, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the listeners with before you shoot off?
Mate, I think we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
I'm tapping out, mate.
No, fair enough.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to follow you or join up on one of your retreats, I'll put all the links into the podcast notes at the bottom, but where can people find you easiest?
Yeah, liveinflow.co is the main website. It's got everything out there. We'll actually be in Croatia in October for a retreat.
Yeah, I've seen.
So you should come, mate. Come on. Yeah, pop over, mate. It's just a hop, skip, and a jump, right?
Amazing. Matt, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks a lot, mate. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you've enjoyed the episode, please do give it a like. And if you're new around here, do subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.